Well, hello there, and welcome to day 44 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. And after the heavy week of intense, adult, mature films that I have watched, I thought I would go for something quite light and stress-free. So I have gone for the 2011 Disney animated film Tangled. Coming to this film at this point in Disney's journey is quite an interesting one because it's a funny place, really, when we now exist in a world where Disney films can be much more expansive in terms of the types of stories they tell. In terms of things like out there ideas like Wreck-It Ralph, Zootopia, these are the sorts of films that a classic Disney exec would immediately throw out. But in the last decade, really have sort of led the future of what the Disney animated franchise looks like. Whereas Tangled is a more traditional princess princess centered animated film. Before anything, I suppose there's a question of did I enjoy it, and yeah, it was fun. I think it was quite I wouldn't say throwaway, but it was very middle of the pack. That's to say, it doesn't have the greatness of the originals, but it doesn't do any of the sort of subversions of the postmodern Princess Disney films. It is, as I say, it's an interesting positioning for the film in terms of you can definitely see the desire to start to push the boundaries of the princess-centric storytelling. Where you take something like Rapunzel and you try to re-examine the narrative in a way that puts the princess character, played by Mandy Moore, more in an autonomous position. Because, of course, famously, the big criticisms of your classics, your Snow Whites, your Cinderellas, your Sleeping Beauties, is that in spite of being your titular character, they really do not have autonomy in their own narratives, and it is just the nature of storytelling at the time and the fact that those sorts of stories were really wanting to capture the folklore almost as was told prior to that version. Whereas this is definitely in that much more self-aware, power, feminist position of wanting to say, okay, Rapunzel, even though she's not actually her name's not in the title, Rapunzel is our figurehead, and so therefore we want to give her more autonomy and put her as the front and center in her own story. There's a question over the sort of the fact that Tangled was released 2011 and then Frozen was released in 2013, and to some degree Tangled is I wouldn't say it's forgotten. People recognise it. It's a known quantity, and don't get me wrong, it is a Tangled is up there, but whether it's overshadowed by Frozen because Frozen became such a global powerhouse that it really sort of overshadowed the films that came just before it and just after it for a good long while. And I will say that putting them side by side, I can see the things that Frozen does that are more interesting than what Tangled does. Insofar as I like the fact that it takes the focus off a romantic relationship primarily and focuses it on a different kind of relationship, that of the sisterly one. I think the songs are just that little bit better. The big problem I've had with the Tangled songs is that they're good, but they're not earworms. I won't really, except for maybe Mother Knows Best, none of them really sort of resonate in a way that I'll be humming it in the shower. Whereas, of course, Frozen is infamous and famous for its, grand sweeping, and of course, the big problem being that the Zachary Levi character and the male lead from Frozen are very similar types of characters. What I will say is I actually do think I prefer Zachary Levi's character, and where they do the romance, they do it a lot better in Tangled, much better than the one that they kind of hand wave in Frozen. Because Mandy Moore and Zachary Levi do have incredibly good chemistry, and you can really see the romance feels organic, and that's surprisingly rare in a Disney film. We're simply told that the romances are supposed to be, or we just slightly accept the implausibility of them. Whereas in the case of Tangled, it really does work hard to make you believe that these two people fall in love with each other. I do think Donna Murphy's a really good Mother Gothel. She's like Idina Menzel. She is the case of a actress who isn't well known in the film industry. She's had a career, but she's not. But she is well known in the theatre sense. She's a Tony award-winning actress who has a powerful voice, and that's really where I saw the comparisons. And as I said, her song is probably the best one, and she is a very powerful character in the narrative. Like I say, it's very middle of the pack for me. Good, but I definitely think I'm interested in other kinds of boundary pushing. The only other thing I would say that I was quite surprised by was the animation quality, and it's given, of course, Disney animation quality is phenomenal, but I was saying to my fiancée Helen, I said, is this the first one that did that style of animation? She said, no, that was quite, Disney were quite a dab hand at it. But I just at the top of my head couldn't remember, because it is glowing, and it is Disney throwing it out there, because the world of it does look phenomenal. I just don't feel like the story grabbed me quite as well as it could have done. I don't know. It just didn't resonate in a way that I really wanted it to. Just to draw one more comparison, I've often loved for a long time the Neil Gaiman adaptation of the Neil Gaiman story Stardust, and it does a very similar structured narrative, which is two people falling in love, one of which is magical, one of whom sort of a roguish kind of idiot who doesn't quite know what he's doing, as they wander across a fantasy landscape. But where Tangled probably slightly starts to push subversion, Stardust really melds in a way that appeals to me, and I thought, and I remember from a decade ago how well that film of that style affected me. So, good sit, quite a relief after this week, but so. Anyway, I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care. Thanks.